And we just got it to work. There we go. Okay. Should we wait for a couple more minutes, Ryan, or should we get started?
I think you should go for it.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for attending the Accessible Social Media presentation today. We're so glad you could virtually be here. First, I'd just like to go over some quick housekeeping items for the webinar. To minimize distractions, we ask you to please keep your microphone muted for the duration of the webinar, unless it's, apologies, your turn to speak. I know in the webinar format, you can't unmute yourself, but when you are speaking, please keep background noise to a minimum. Please use the chat for questions and other important messages rather than just a water cooler, because often excessive chat notifications can become quite disruptive for many participants, especially those using a screen reader. So today's webinar will be using the built-in Zoom captions, and the slides from the webinar will be posted on accessiblelibraries.ca, and that will include any links. And as well as all the links in today's webinar will be posted in the chat throughout the presentation. So please note, it is officially working. The live stream, the webinar will be live streamed to the Accessible Libraries YouTube channel. And we will stop the live stream just before the final questions. And now we can get started. Corey?
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all enjoying a lovely spring wherever you're joining us from today. And since we are presenting and attending from all across the country, I just want to start off by taking a moment to give across Canada land acknowledgement. So our presenters today come from across this land, living and working in what we now know as Canada. We respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples, and will continue to honor the commitments to self-determination and sovereignty we have made to Indigenous nations and peoples. We respectfully ask for you all to take a moment to acknowledge the lands on which you reside. Thank you for that. And now we would like to take a moment to briefly introduce ourselves. My name is Corey Wintemute, and I am the audiobook coordinator for the National Network for Equitable Library Service, or NNELS. And I would also like to acknowledge that I am presenting from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, also known as Vancouver.
Hi, I'm Megan Selmer. I'm the Web and Usability Assistant at NNELS. I would like to acknowledge that I live on the traditional and unceded territory of the Sililic, Okanagan, and Inkalipa people. Letitia?
Hello, everyone. My name is Letitia Famobeni. I am an accessibility tester with NNELS. Simon?
My name is Simon Jager, and I am an accessibility analyst at NNELS.
Hi, my name is Kai. I'm an accessibility analyst also for NNELS.
Okay, and this collaborative project is funded by the Government of Canada, co-led by the Centre for Equitable Library Access, CELA, and the National Network for Equitable Library Service, NNELS, in partnership with eBound. The goal of this project is to create a consolidated resource center focused on education and training library staff across the country on the importance of accessibility. And now Megan is going to give us a quick overview of the topics we're going to be covering today.
Thanks, Corey. So in the next few slides, we're going to introduce and discuss why accessible social media posts and content are so important. And then we're going to move on to practical tips and guidelines for making your social media posts accessible. I'd like to take the time to note now that while this presentation is live, this section will include pre-recorded demonstrations of inaccessible and accessible social media posts, and as well as demos on how to add alt text to images in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and how to edit captions in YouTube. Also, throughout this presentation, we will have hands-on learning opportunities for everybody using Zoom polls that we hope you enjoy. I'll now hand it back to Corey.
Okay, so first off, let's talk about assistive technologies. When we use the term assistive technology, we're referring to the products, equipment, and systems that enhance reading, learning, working, and daily living for persons with disabilities. So these can include screen readers, screen magnification and enhancement software, refreshable braille displays, switch devices, augmentative and alternate communication, and speech recognition software. And this slide contains an image on the right-hand side. It is an image of a variety of assistive technologies, including but not limited to a hearing aid, smartphone, and a text-to-speech keyboard at a payphone. And now Megan is going to tell us a bit about how these assistive technologies relate to accessible social media.
So the content you post on social media needs to be accessible and understandable. So a big part of this is using inclusive design and language in your posts to prevent the exclusion of groups of people from accessing your content. And one of those groups is many social media users use assistive technologies, such as screen readers and braille displays to browse content. If you ensure the content you post is accessible for users of assistive technologies, you are well on your way to creating really accessible social media content for all. Corey?
Yeah, and so now that we know what can make your social media more accessible, let's go over a few of the reasons why that is important. So firstly, it increases the number of people your information will reach. So if your social media posts are not created with accessibility in mind, then you're unintentionally excluding some of your followers. If your social media is fully accessible, it reflects positively on your library because it shows that you're creating an inclusive environment for all of your patrons. And finally, even if your actual library is fully accessible, some patrons may never find this out as they might engage with your inaccessible social media or marketing and assume that the physical space is the same. So now I'm going to pass it over to Letitia, who is going to tell us a bit about the components of an accessible social media post.
Thank you, Kerry. So accessible social media component. What do you need to consider when creating accessible social media post? So we do have 5 elements here: alternative text, Pascal case hashtag, thoughtful use of emojis, captions for videos, and audio descriptions. Now, let's start with alternative text, what it is. So alternative text or alt text is a textual description of an image for people who can't see the image, such as the blind and deaf-blind. Screen reader will read the alt text of an image if it is available. So creating alt text. So adding alt text create a more inclusive social media experience and allows your post to reach more people. As we all know, some social media platforms use AI-generated alt text for images. Unfortunately, the alt text generated is often incorrect and confusing. So when you are faced with alt text character limit, prioritize the description of your image and write out any text in the image in your post. Now, let's talk about non-existent. Sorry. So now let's talk about non-existing alt text. What is the experience like for an assistive technology user when you do not add alt text to images or GIFs? So this is what may happen. Screen readers may read the file name of the image or create AI alt text that is inaccurate. They might also read nothing at all, only telling the user there is an image or graphic with no label. So consequently, people who use alt text will be excluded from accessing the full meaning of your social media post. Now, let's watch a quick example of an image without alt text.
So I thought that before getting into the demonstrations, I would quickly demonstrate the screen reader itself. Apple's devices all have a screen reader called VoiceOver that can be turned on from accessibility settings. And VoiceOver essentially allows a person to interact with whatever device it may be, a TV, a phone, or a Mac, without actually having to see it. And the way this works on a touchscreen device like this iPhone I'm recording from is with custom gestures. In the most basic form, if I touch something on the screen, VoiceOver will read what it is, whereas for a sighted person, it would actually open the thing I just touched. If I actually do want to open that thing, I double tap it. But if I don't, I can safely explore the screen by touching various parts of it or even dragging my finger around. So if I touch the tweet text here...
The following thread of posts are for demonstration purposes and will be deleted shortly. All text and hashtags are incorrect/absent on purpose.
VoiceOver will read it. I can't actually do anything with that because it's just a piece of text on the screen, but I'm about to get into the image demonstration, which will involve choosing the right tweet. So let's find that. I'm just gonna...
Biblios Accessibles Libraries. Replying to it Biblios Access. Interested in learning more about the World Wide Web? Check out this section of the library pic.twitter.com. 36 minutes ago. 1 reply. Actions available.
And now I'm going to double tap, which will open that tweet. I can do this anywhere on the screen, so it doesn't have to be precise. It'll activate the last thing that VoiceOver read out.
Twitter. Profile photo. Biblios Accessibles Libraries. Button. Image.
And
double tap to view profile.
See whether this image has alt text. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And thanks to Apple's AI, my phone is going to try and tell me what's in this image, and it's not going to do a very good job of it. Let's see this.
Landscape. Image. Displays this image full size. Books on shelves in a well-lit area. Possible text. 100 Spasibo no googly majo urs pip 33035 km 307 Lenini. Saw. Agaox tip 34835 k. Linhini. 4.738.5. Cifrawia SSDOS hasp 01. SRNINGI. Internet.
So I guess not a good job is relative, because it did tell me that it was books on shelves, which is great, and it eventually read the word internet, which is great. That was the point of the tweet. I had to listen through a lot of gibberish to get there, which is not great. Had this image had alt text, we'll see in one of the next demonstrations that it would have been a lot easier to get that information out of the post.
Okay, so now let's talk about alternative text, the bad. What is bad alt text? The alt text is automatically generated by AI and lacks details or context. The alt text is the alt text is too long and verbose. The alt text does not adequately and accurately describe the image. The alt text is not objective or contains bias. Now, let's watch another short video that shows us an example of bad alt text. So we just learned about bad alt text. Now, let's see a tangible example of bad alt text in this post.
accessiblelibraries.com/heading level 2 link accessible library link 20M. Shared with public graphic actions for this post button a demonstration for testing bad. Interested in learning more about the World Wide Web? Check out this section of the library. Link graphic a bookshelf.
Now you see the alt text here says a bookshelf. That's it. This is a bad alt text because the description is too short and it does not describe accurately or concisely the image. If you can see on the screen, you will realize that this post uses an image to present important information. So anyone who relies on alt text will lose the meaning of the post. Okay, now that we have learned something about non-existing alt text, bad alt text. Let's talk about the alternative text to good. So what is good alt text? Images are described clearly and concisely. The alt text provides any relevant context to the image as it relates to the social media post. The alt text uses present tense and action verbs. Descriptions should be objective and free from censorship. We all know that some things may be difficult to describe, but the goal here is to give the reader all the important information in the image. Now, let's watch another short video that shows us a good example of, an example of good alt text. So let's revisit the same image with good alt text this time.
Tag may access heading level link to M. Shared action, a demonstration interested in learning more about the worldwide link graphic, a closed dash up of a cream dash colored library bookshelf that provides patrons with blue subject dividers. The image focuses on the divider for the subject left quote internet right quote, which has the Dewey Decimal Call number left quote 004.738.5. Right quote. Like button.
Now you can see the difference between the first alt text that says only like a bookshelf and this one. This is a more accurate and concise alt text. More importantly, this alt text includes the message that is presented on the image. So anyone who relies on alt text here will not lose the meaning of the post. Okay, so we have learned three things already. The bad and good alt text, the non-existing alt text. Now let's see some techniques for alt text success. Be accurate and succinct when describing images. Don't be redundant in your descriptions. Write for your audience. This is an important point. For instance, when you will describe an image intended for children, like an image from a storybook, differently than you would a Stephen King book cover. If there is text within an image, write it out. Do not censor all text, because people who use screen readers should receive equal access to the information conveyed in images. Describe the physical criteria of people in images. And finally, do not describe decorative images. We mean images that are purely aesthetic and do not convey any meaning. And if possible, avoid using decorative images in your post. Now, let's see common mistakes. We have quite a few of them here. So when describing your images, do not rely on automatically generated alt text. Do not include phrases like, this is an image graphic of, because screen reader will announce that it is a graphic before reading the description. Do not add information if it is already in the surrounding text. For example, do not use captions description as alt text. And finally, do not use alt text to add extra information not related to the image, such as keywords for marketing. So now let's see a good example of alt text. So this is an example of a good alt text, and we're gonna read it together. A cat with a butterfly sitting on the tip of its nose. The cat sits outside in the setting sun. The cat has white, long hair with gray spots. It has green eyes and a black nose. The small butterfly is blue with black wingtip. So this is a good, well-described and concise alt text. Now, in the next few slides, we are going to learn how to add alt text to images in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So we have 3 videos. Let's start with the first one, how to add alt text to images in Facebook.
Now let's add some alt text to an image in Facebook. I'll begin by creating a post. First, I'll upload an image. Then I'll add the alt text. To do this, select the Edit option located in the top left corner of the image. This opens a photo detail pop-up. Select the menu option Alternative Text. Facebook generates its own custom alt text for images. In this case, it says, maybe an image of one person, book, and indoor. Not great, so we're going to add our own custom alt text. Our alt text says, an arm is pulling a book off a library bookshelf. You cannot see the book's title, but it has a green cover. The arm has a light skin tone and a white wristwatch. The bookshelf is one in a long line of bookshelves that fade into the background. I'm happy with that, so I'm going to click Save. There you go. You've added alt text to an image in Facebook. Let's post it. You can also edit the alt text of previously posted images. To do this, click on the image and then go to the 3 dots in the right corner of the post. Then select the Change Alt Text. Now, if you have not already added alt text to this image, this menu option will be called Override Generated Alt Text. Let's change alt text. There you go. We've just edited the alt text of a previously posted image.
Okay, so next we are going to learn how to add alt text to images in Twitter.
So here we are on the browser version of Twitter, and I'm going to quickly walk you through how to add alt text to your posts. So start by clicking the tweet button on the left sidebar, and then click on the media button. And then you're just going to want to choose the image that you want to attach. From here, you just click on the Add Description button underneath the photo. And next, you're going to see a text box appear, which you can write your alt text into. It allows you to describe up to 1,000 characters, which should be more than enough for most social media images. And then from here, you just click the Save button up at the top. And now your image with alt text is ready to be posted. Another thing I should note here is that Twitter recently added a new feature which makes it very easy to tell which images contain alt text. Those that do have the word alt in the bottom corner of the image. This also makes it much more obvious if you forgot to include alt text in your own posts.
Okay, now let's all learn how to add alt text to images on Instagram.
And now here we are on the browser version of Instagram, where I can show you how to quickly include your alt text in these posts. So we're going to start by clicking the plus symbol icon at the top here to create a new post. And then we're going to select the picture that you want to post. We'll use the same one from the previous demo. And then you're just going to want to click next a couple of times to get to the page we want, which is this last one here. And then you just click this accessibility drop-down menu to the right of the picture. And then from there, a text box will appear where you can enter your alt text before posting.
So we have taken time to learn about alt text, the do's, the don'ts, the good, the bad. Let's take some time to practice what we just learned. Megan?
Thanks, Letitia. So, and then next few slides, we're going to show you an image with a caption, and then we'll launch a Zoom poll for each image. We're going to ask you to select the best alt text option from 4 or 5. Once the poll is closed, we will let you know what the best option is, and we will talk about we'll talk more about the other options you could have selected.
Okay, so the first one here we have is an image of a self-checkout machine that you might find in many different libraries. The caption reads, "Stopping in to pick up your holds but short on time. All of our locations offer self-checkout kiosks that require nothing but your library card and books." So we're just going to give you a minute or two to answer the poll before Megan shares the results with us.
Okay, we'll give you 20 or 30 more seconds. All right, thank you, everybody. Okay, so most of you selected the first and fourth option, and we were a little sneaky because both of those are good options for alt text. The fourth one does have a size, like at 5 feet, so it does give you a sense of the size of the, oh, we're on image 2, Corey, of the image. But yeah, so both were good options. The one that says a self-checkout library machine that steals library jobs was an example of alt text bias. All right, let's move on to image 2. The caption for this image is, "Looking for a quiet place to study? Our branches offer several conference rooms that could be rented out to anyone with a library card." All right, 20 more seconds. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so a library conference room with a long rectangular table and 6 chairs around it. The room has large green framed windows that look into the courtyard. Option number 3 was the best alt text example because it describes both the main object of the image and the surrounding area to give a sense of context. Option 1 for that poll, maybe an image of table and indoor, was an example of auto-generated text in, or alt text in Facebook. Okay, let's move on to the third image.
Okay, and for the last one, we have an image of a large printer and scanner, and the caption reads, "Need to fill out some important forms this tax season? Come on down to your local branch to use our printing and copying services. Our prices are reasonable, and one of our staff members is always happy to assist you with the machine."
All right, 20 more seconds. Awesome, thank you. So this is another one where they had two good alt text options. So 1 and 4 were both good. Again, just the sense of size, but the other one's more succinct. So just goes to show that different authors are going to describe things differently. And yes, an outdated and wasteful machine that you can use to copy stuff and a tree killer were clearly examples of alt text bias. I forgot to share the results for that one. There you go. Okay, thank you. So we have some questions about alt text that we'll start to answer now. So from the Q&A, we have a question. Can we rely on alt text pulling in from a website when the post populates the web link preview image? Or does it default to AI generated text? So for example, sharing a link on Facebook and the website generates a link image preview you cannot edit.
So generally speaking, that image preview also comes with some text that previews some important information on the page, and that's what the screen reader experience tends to be. We get that text.
Okay. So someone asked, I see a lot of people write their Instagram image descriptions directly in the caption rather than using the AI text feature. What is the benefit? I know Later, which we use for scheduling, doesn't have an alt text editor, so I have to go in manually after posting.
Are you saying what's the benefit of writing a description out instead of using the AI one, or am I misunderstanding?
I think I
believe-
can clarify. I think what they mean is sometimes when you make the post on like Instagram, say, instead of going into the alt text box that's like in the post, a lot of people will just write like in the caption, say like image description, and then put the image description into the caption like that.
I see. Well, I guess the difference is it shows up for everyone. Some people might do it because, like in the example, you can't edit it directly on whatever app they tend to be using. I would say some images don't necessarily require a description if there's enough information in the caption, and if the caption is going to be interesting to other people, that may be a way of doing it. But other than that, I don't think there's a difference. Any app that people are going to be using Instagram on to consume content, not to create it, should have a way for screen readers to read the image description. So if you put it on the, sorry, my Zoom just told me I was muted, even though I'm not. If you put it on the alt text, it means that sighted people not using screen readers won't be seeing it, which is probably what you want in the case of an image description.
Awesome. Okay, another question is about alt text for social media. They schedule all their Instagram and Facebook posts in a Facebook planner. but they don't see a way to add alt text when creating posts in Facebook Planner. Do you know if it's possible to add alt text using Facebook Planner?
I would look for a help article on that. They may have an accessibility page. I'm not even sure what that is, whether it's an official Facebook app or anything like that off the top of my head. I would say if you don't see it, one extra thing you could do if you felt like it is reach out to them and say, hey, we want to make our content accessible and you're getting in the way of that. Can you please fix it?
Awesome. Okay. They use Hootsuite for scheduling posts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and they don't see an option for adding alt text there. Say again that look for help page, and Hootsuite has a great help article about adding alt text that I will add to the chat. Hopefully that helps. Okay, so what is the difference between, like, when would you classify an image as decorative and when would you classify it as something that needs alt text?
So I would say, this is Kai here. I'd say that the decorative alt text would be borders and other effects that don't add any value to the understanding of the image. It's just purely aesthetic. So usually those don't have to be described unless it adds some sort of importance to the way that the message is perceived.
Awesome. Okay.
Megan, you also have a hand raised.
Oh, yes, sorry. Andrea? Oh. Oh, I'm asking you to unmute, but it's not. Okay, Andrea? What's your question? Oh, we can't hear you, but you are unmuted.
Oh, the question's been answered.
Oh, okay. I think, is there any, oh, okay. Is there any more questions for alt text? Did I miss any?
I'm wondering if either Kai, Simon, or Letitia can expand a little bit more on decorative images and which are decorative and which aren't, just for clarification. Kai, why don't you go?
Sure. So in some images that are there, sometimes you'll get like borders and patches of like background color, or like decorative symbols that are used. I think I think in terms of decorative, it's a lot of it comes down to whatever the meaning of it is. If it's just there to purely, spruce up the image, like an infographic, then that's not necessarily important to include. But I think it comes down to just practice and looking at what's there, because it really depends on the context and what you're trying to convey.
I see it a lot more on web pages where there are images all over the place to just add some visual appeal to the page, whereas social media is so often, we want to post this image and we want people to see it, whereas a website is, we want people to be able to look at this anytime they want as a whole thing. So I would say it's more of a concern on websites because there could be a huge number of images depending on the design template or the designer used for making it.
I think the other thing to ask yourself is, when you're describing images, is to ask yourself, if this image was not here, will the reader or the user of the website or the social media will still understand what the message that I want to convey. If the answer is yes, then you really don't have to describe it. But if your image is trying to maybe add to what you're writing, then it should be described.
Yeah, I think it's important just to mention that even if the post doesn't need a description, but you're posting an image anyways, it's worth adding just a little bit of alt text. But if the meaning is already understood, then you don't have to go into as much detail.
Yeah, it might be better to think of them as background images on social media, because if an image is, prominently featuring something that people might be curious about, even if it doesn't take away from their understanding not to have it, you could still alt text it.
Awesome. We have another question in the Q&A. It might be an odd question, but is adding gender to photo descriptions important? Sometimes it could be objective or unnecessary, but I don't want to leave out any info that could be helpful. I often say an adult or a child.
Yeah, great question. So if you know the gender and say you're describing an author and you know their gender from their social media or from their bios, if they choose to share, then it's really helpful to include that as part of the description. Because I think one thing to keep in mind when you write alt text is that you're writing to ensure that people who can't see images in the traditional form are able to understand everything that's important in an image. And so this would include physical characteristics as well.
Somebody asked if screen readers can read numbers. Yes, definitely. They can read pretty much anything, including emojis, which we'll get to soon. Spoiler alert. It doesn't really matter how you write it out. If the tweet says something like 4:30, it's still going to read out that time properly. In fact, a lot of screen readers will convert it into a proper time readout.
Okay, if there are no more questions about alt text, let's learn about hashtags.
Okay, and that's me. So hashtags are searchable topics or categories that are added to social media posts. It can be a word or a multiple word or a phrase. Always begins with a number sign or hash symbol, and it cannot have punctuations or symbols other than the number sign at the beginning. One thing to keep in mind when you're writing hashtags is if it's multiple words, use Pascal case. Hashtags and other phrases that combine multiple words should always be written this way. Pascal case indicates the separation of words by adding a capital letter to the first letter of each word. It's very commonly known as camel case, but this is not completely correct, and we'll get to why in a moment. But when hashtags are in Pascal case, screen readers will read out each word individually as though it had a space between it. So for instance, if you have the hashtag accessible social media, the capital A, the S, and the M should all be capitalized, and this will cause the screen reader to read it as accessible social media, whereas if you wrote it with all lowercase or all uppercase, it might be spoken as something like accessible social media, which is confusing. So if you don't use Pascal case, this is the kind of thing that can happen, and it will get worse the more words you add into the hashtag. If it's particularly long, the screen reader may just give up on pronouncing it or spell it out or something. The difference between Pascal case and camel case is that camel case does not capitalize the first letter of the first word. So in accessible social media, if it were written in proper camel case, the A would not be capitalized. We prefer Pascal case because it means that every word gets a capital. So where should you add hashtags? Screen readers will read the word hashtag, or in some cases just number sign, when encountering a hashtag. This can be a little bit disruptive if there are a lot of hashtags. So if you have 3 or more hashtags in the middle of sentences, like if you're replacing words with hashtags, think about whether you could move those to the end so that it's less disruptive to screen reader users. A good example of this would be get your hashtag Braille books at your local library. A bad example of this would be get your hashtag Braille hashtag books at your hashtag local library. That's just too many hashtags to read when trying to read the tweet all at once. So we have a couple of demos that incorporate these examples. First, we're going to show a tweet that does many things incorrectly and see how bad it could be.
Looking for hashtag ebooks and hashtag audiobooks? Visit our hashtag digital resources page. Hashtag that hashtags hashtag WEMADETHISPOSTONPURPOSETOPROVE hashtag HANDBREADCHICKENTENDERTEXT hashtag world's longest hashtag.
So a lot of things went wrong there. There were some hashtags in the middle of sentences, which is maybe bordering on a little bit disruptive. There were also many mispronounced hashtags. Digital resources was mispronounced as digital resources. World's longest hashtag was pronounced as world's longest hashtag, which is a really good example of what can happen when you mash words together. The TH is obviously meant to be part of two different words, but the screen reader doesn't know that. And the other two hashtags were just spelled out. And for those who can visually see them, you may have noticed that VoiceOver, the screen reader, actually gave up halfway through spelling them out because they were just so long. It didn't know what to do with them, and it didn't want to keep spelling out those words because it just takes too long. So now let's hear this tweet with all of these issues fixed.
Looking for ebooks and audiobooks? Visit our digital resources page. Hashtag good hashtags, hashtag audiobooks, hashtag ebooks, hashtag digital resources, hashtag we made this post to prove a point, hashtag hand-breaded chicken tender Texas toast sandwich, hashtag world's longest hashtag.
As a side note, hand-breaded chicken tender Texas toast sandwich is a real hashtag that was apparently used. We looked up some of the longest hashtags. So that's all from me, and now it's back to Megan for some practice.
Thanks, Simon. Okay, let's practice the accessible hashtags. So we're going to have two poll options, two of each. The first one will ask you to select the accessible hashtag from a list of options. And then we are going to provide you with hashtags that need to be fixed in order to make them accessible. So for example, accessible social media, you will capitalize the A, the S, and the M in accessible social media to make it into Pascal case. For that one, you will be typing your answers into the Zoom poll text box. So let's start with the first poll, selecting the accessible hashtag. All right, we'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'll just end the poll, share the result. So 98% of you selected the accessible hashtag. The M for make all social media posts accessible, the M, the A, the S, the M, the P, the A are all capitalized. Awesome. All right, let's try that again. Okay, a couple more seconds. Anybody needs more time? Awesome. Everybody selected the accessible option. For the hashtag National Library Week, the N, the L, and the W are all capitalized. I'd like to note that we, in the bottom option, we made it a camel case option, but we also added an exclamation mark. And I'm glad to see nobody that selected that one. Okay, now let's fix some hashtags. Here you go. We'll give you guys a little bit for this one. Oh. Okay, give it 20 more seconds. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Let's see some of the answers. Yep, capitalizing the U, P, the U in use, the P in Pascal, the C in case, the F in for, and the H in hashtags. Awesome. All right. Okay, let's do the next one. Okay, 20 more seconds. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's look at the details for that. It's just taking a perfect. The W, the T, the R, and the N are all capitalized. Awesome. Okay. The polls for the hashtags are done. Does anybody have any questions about accessible hashtags? Give it a few moments in case somebody's typing. All right. There doesn't appear to be any questions about hashtag. Now we're going to have a brief break, 5 minutes. Let everybody stretch, get something to drink if they need it. And we will be right back to talk about emojis. Okay, we'll just give it a few moments before we start again. Thank you so much for attending today. Okay, Simon, are you ready to talk about emojis?
I am.
Excellent.
Okay, so using emoji in your social media posts. Each emoji has a text description which is read out loud by screen readers as part of whatever you may be reading. For instance, one of the most infamous emojis is described as a face with tears of joy. You can use a site called emojipedia.org to look up the emoji meanings. It'll have descriptions of the emoji, but also just the short name that a screen reader would call it, which is pretty useful. One thing to consider is that using too many emojis in a row can become confusing and verbose for a screen reader user since all of them are read out. So using a few emojis, though, can be fun or inclusive. For instance, you can use emojis to describe the title of a book. So I have a few demos of this. One of the most common things I've seen on social media, though not for a while, is people using clapping hands emojis in place of spaces between words. So every word has a clapping hands emoji between it. This is a really good example, though extreme, of how emojis can be really verbose with a screen reader. Let's hear what that could sound like.
Please clapping hands, make clapping hands, your clapping hands, social clapping hands, media clapping hands, posts clapping hands, accessible clapping hands, to clapping hands, sparkles, everyone sparkles. 3 clapping hands.
So kind of like hashtags, they're mixed in with the text and read out loud, and that can just become extremely frustrating to read through. It's a really good idea when you're using emojis to figure out if they're decorative or whether they actually add to the meaning in that particular place, and much like hashtags, move them to the end if necessary. Let's hear what this could sound like if these things are considered.
Clapping hands. Please make your social media posts accessible to everyone. Clapping hands.
Another odd trend I've noticed is people occasionally using emojis to represent letters. So they'll spell out words, but instead of a letter, they'll put an emoji that looks a little bit like that letter. This can be problematic because in addition to being verbose, some screen reader users might not understand what the emoji looks like or how it compares to what the letter looks like. So they may not be able to understand what the post says at all. Let's have a look at this. This demo is going to be first the tweet being read out in full, which just sounds completely nonsensical, but then me going through the post character by character using voiceover, which makes it a little bit more intelligible, though still reasonably confusing.
D circle mark, GM top hat, N and copyright sign, a Latin cross, K identification sign. Cap D, circle mark, G, space. Cap M, top hat, N. Space, ampersand, space, copyright sign, A, Latin cross, space, cap K, identification sign.
So that translates to Dogman and Cat Kid. Now let's have some fun demos. A couple of book titles.
5 monkey, up down arrow, bed.
5 little monkeys jumping on the bed. And one more.
Smiling face with glasses, high voltage sign, magic wand, plus symbol, door, face with a zipper mouth.
The interesting thing about that is when we were originally looking it up, we intended for the high voltage sign to be a lightning bolt, which makes a lot more sense in the context of what it is, which is Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. It's a good example of why it's important to look up the text description of emojis before using them. And one last demo, using emoji in a sentence to replace words.
The girl's head went to the stack of books, classical building, to renew her video game controller, and also check mark, out of fire, book.
So the sentence obviously sounds absurd if taken literally the way VoiceOver reads it, but that's, I think screen reader users are capable of translating if necessary. So what that roughly translates to, the girl went to the library to renew her video game and check out a hot new title. And now, back to Megan for practice.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Okay, let's practice the emojis. We have some polls for you. So the first option is we're going to ask you to choose the accessible use of emojis in a social media post, which are listed on the next slide. And then we have one movie title and a couple book titles that you can guess using that we've created just with emojis. After each one, we will also let you know what the descriptions for all the emojis are, so you can get a sense of what the screen reader would have read for those options. Okay, let's start with the accessible use of emojis. Corey?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to read this out sort of the same way that a screen reader would. So I'm going to read the text for the emojis just to give you a better sense of that. So option A is, today is Globe Showing America Accessibility Awareness Day. Raised hands. Share one thing you've done to make your library more accessible. Green book, blue book, orange book, red book, green book, blue book, orange book, red book, green book, blue book, orange book, red book, green book. Hashtag accessible libraries. And then we have option B. Today is hashtag global, hashtag accessibility, hashtag awareness, hashtag day. Party popper, raised hands, clapping hands, party popper, raised hands, clapping hands. Share one thing you've done to make your library more accessible. Wheelchair symbol, green book, party popper, raised hands, clapping hands. And option C, today is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Share one thing you've done to make your library more accessible. Globe Showing America, wheelchair symbol, party popper. Hashtag accessible libraries. And then we have option D. Today is Clapping Hands Global Clapping Hands Accessibility Clapping Hands Awareness Clapping Hands Day. Share one thing you've done to make your library more accessible. Hashtag ACCESSIBLE.
Awesome. Thanks, Corey. We'll just give it a couple more seconds for you to enter your answer. Okay, and the poll. Here are the results. Everybody answered C, and that is the accessible option. Awesome. All right, let's guess a movie title. And we'll give it a couple more seconds. Awesome. Okay, so the correct answer for that emoji title was Star Wars Rise of Skywalker. The emoji descriptions in the image are star, cross swords, chart increasing, Milky Way, and person walking. All right, now let's guess a book title. Okay, give it a few more seconds. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so everybody guessed the right answer, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I will say The Lion in the Living Room is on my personal to do read list, but okay, so the emojis descriptions for this image is lion, woman mage, and then door. Okay, and our last emoji poll, guess the second book title. There you go. All right, 15 more seconds. Awesome, thank you, everybody. Okay. And most of you selected angels and demons. That was the right answer. The emoji descriptions for this image is smiling face with halo, smiling face with halo, ampersand, and then angry face with horns, angry face with horns. All right. So now let's learn all about captions. Kai?
Thanks. So what are captions? Captions are a text version of the audio users needs to understand the content. It includes both speech, so characters, dialogue, narration, and non-speech such as birds chirping. Media with audio must have captions. Captions mean that both people who need them, such as those who are deaf or hard of hearing, and people in public spaces who don't have headphones can both understand the content. AI-generated captions are often grammatically incorrect and have difficulty picking up different accents and speedy talkers. We understand that captions can be difficult and time-consuming to create, but we suggest hiring a stenographer if you can, and also editing AI-generated captions like in YouTube before posting any media with audio. So now let's look at what bad captions will look like.
Level 1. 1. Item 1, 1 of 3. Level 2. A. Item 1A. B. Item 1B. Level 1. 2. Item 2. Level 2. A. Item 2A. B. Item 2B. Level 1. 3. Item 3. Level 0. Heading level 1. Level. Table 1. Uniform table. New cell. Bat heading with direct formatting in. Table. Subheading in table. Row 2 of 2. Last cell in table. Quick keys on. Heading 2 good. Heading level 2 with styles. Heading 1 bold and italics vs strong and emphasis. Heading 2 good. Heading level 2 with styles. Heading 1 good. Heading level 1 with styles.
So as you can see, there's a lot of things wrong with this one. It missed a lot of words. The timing was off, and it misspelled a lot of things. And the clip that you heard was synthesized speech, which was directly piped through using a sound card. So it should provide really clear audio, but as you could see, it still struggled. So now let's take a look at what good captions will look like.
I'm gonna close Harvey and Extraordinary for now and move on to a different kind of book. So reopening my Thorium window, let's have a look. I have this book here. It's a picture book called Mimonda Esi Gekendama, or This Is How I Know from Groundwood Books. It's a dual language picture book with well thought out image descriptions built into each page, in addition to an enhanced audio read aloud recorded by native Anishinaabe speakers. Let's listen to a snippet. So I'm going to open this, and it goes to the first page. I'm pressing the read aloud invokes the audio. I think I actually need to go back a page. Here we go.
Manish Anagi Kandama Nabing. How do I know summer is here?
Pete Oskabid Mang, Winondago Zid Zaga Iganing. Jayawash Kozid, Nimki Dikman Gewe Gazad, Megwe Wigwas Nibishing. When Loon opens her red eyes to call across the water, and green Luna moth hides among birch leaves.
I'm going to stop that there. I just love this book. The illustrations are sweet, and the enhanced audio combined with word-by-word highlighting makes this a unique and captivating reading experience.
All right, so as you're able to see, the grammar and spelling is correct for both languages. It also describes a lot of the sound effects, so the canoe rowing and the loon call, and the captions match up really well with the audio. So these are things to definitely keep in mind and look for with good captions. So how do we add and edit captions in YouTube? Well, now look at a short video to walk you through that.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly walk you through how to manually edit your captions on YouTube. So if any of you have ever uploaded a video to YouTube, you're probably familiar with this YouTube Studio page. And the page we're looking for specifically is the subtitles page, which can be found in this menu on the left-hand side of the screen. So when you click on that, it's going to bring up a list of all the videos that you've published to your page. If you pull down the drop-down menu that's on that, it's going to show you any automatically generated or uploaded subtitles that that video might have. So on the right-hand screen or right-hand side of the screen, there's this blue edit button. So if we click on that, it's going to pull up this new window. And on this screen, it shows the video on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side, we have editable text along with the timestamps for the video. So you can click on any of these and go in and change any mistakes if you see them. And then underneath that, we have this little progress bar if you wanted to scroll through the video. And as you can see, it follows the subtitles as you go along. And another thing I wanted to point out here too is if you hit this little cog wheel underneath the video for the settings, you can adjust the speed. So sometimes it's nice to bump it up to 1.5 or 2 times, especially if it's just people talking slowly, as it'll speed up your editing process. And then also from here, you can, if you click this little 3-dot options menu above the text, you can either download the subtitles, which is handy if you wanted to do your subtitle editing within YouTube, and then if the video was going to live elsewhere, you can still use that subtitle anywhere else. And you can also upload your own subtitle file. So if you've generated it in another transcription service or something like that, you can just throw it in here, and then it'll come up just the same way on the left-hand side here with the text, so you can go in and edit it after the fact. So that's basically how to use the YouTube caption editor. It's always a good idea to go in and manually do it, as the YouTube generated ones often have a fair amount of mistakes. One that comes to mind is our organization NELS often will come up as various things such as snails or nails, or it's very rare that it gets proper names correct. So things like that are important to go in and sort of review for. And then once you're done with that, you can just hit the publish button, and your edited subtitles are ready to go.
All right. Now we'll open it up for questions since this is the end for captions. So if you have any questions about captions, feel free to ask them now.
Or emojis, because I skipped over that question period. Give everybody a few moments. So can you talk about captions for things like Instagram Live? Is this possible?
Yeah, good question. So there's definitely features where you can include captions. I think it'll depend on whether they're generated or not, and whether you're able to edit them. I know Corey has been doing a lot of work with captions, so I'll pass it over to him if he has anything more to add about this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of the same as the process that we're using for this webinar, right? Like if it's live, it'll probably most likely be just an AI generated caption, which isn't going to be the greatest. It's going to have some mistakes, but it's tough unless you have like a very skilled professional stenographer employed. It's sort of tough to get those live ones up to snuff, but that's why it's sort of important. You can use those like live generated ones as your base for when you post the video later, and then you can, like I was saying, you can add that to your YouTube video and go in and sort of just correct the mistakes as you find them.
Awesome. Okay, I have one. Do you know if there is an Emojipedia but with French description? And I haven't come across that. Has anybody else?
Not that I'm aware of, but a workaround potentially could be to turn on something like VoiceOver and have it read the emojis in with the French voice and the French language selected. That might work.
Okay, let's see if there's. Is there an Emojipedia for hidden meaning or double entendres of certain emojis?
So from what we can gather or figure out, Emojipedia and similar services are pretty good about explaining some of those things in their explanation and how it's generally used. Yeah, that still could be a really good resource.
Mm-hmm. They have it in the, so it's not in the description, but it's in like the exclamation or the explanation of the emoji.
Yep.
So for eggplant, for example, they explain that. I was wondering if alt text works in bilingual posts on Facebook.
I believe if you haven't added any alt text, it will use AI generated ones for that language. But I haven't personally explored that as much. Maybe others in the presentation here have.
In my experience, it hasn't handled both languages very well, unless it's like a single angular post. So usually we'll just like add another description for both. So one English and one French.
Okay, can you add alt text to Instagram stories?
I was playing around with this a little bit, and from what I found, I don't think you can. And I was going to touch on that a bit later in the presentation too, about like stories and reels are definitely sort of the trendy topic with Instagram right now, and I think a lot of these considerations we're talking about are sort of difficult to implement into them, specifically the captions. Like, I know you can put captions on the reels and stuff like that, but as far as I can tell, the screen reader doesn't pick them up. So a lot of times you'll see like a story that has like a clip of a video or something like that, and it'll just have like a static caption over top of it that gives the video some context, but then it doesn't, if the screen reader is not picking that up, then that's not really fully accessible, right? So
And I think just to clarify that, screen reader users aren't the primary target audience for captions, but because screen reader users may have multiple disabilities, then there's, depending on the platform and how things have been coded, there is a little bit of support where it can hook into the screen reader to read out captions.
Okay, let's go on to learn about audio description.
Great. So audio descriptions provide content to persons who are blind or have low vision, and it describes any visual information needed to understand the content, including any text displayed in the video. It's also known as described video or video descriptions. So for example, this is something you might hear when you have the audio descriptive track turned on. A man sits at a desk slowly flipping through a file. He stops on a page with a crime scene image. The picture is of a closed painted brown door with the number 4A above a small circular peephole. Yellow police tape stretches across the doorway that says, "Crime scene, do not cross." So there is a difference between audio descriptions that you add after and integrated audio descriptions. So integrated descriptions are descriptions that use sound and dialogue to convey everything that's happening in the video. So when a blind or low vision viewer watches the video, they can follow along without any extra audio track. And so we kind of consider this as putting in accessibility from the start and making your videos born accessible, so to speak. With descriptions that have been added afterwards, it usually comes in the form of an audio track that goes on top of the video and inserts inserts audio descriptions between the dialogue. So a really good tool that you can use to provide audio descriptions on YouTube videos is called UDescribe. And it's a really easy way for you to make videos that you put on YouTube very accessible by providing an audio descriptive track. They also have some really great resources. One of them is a playlist of videos to help you get started in making good audio descriptions. So now let's look at a video that doesn't have audio descriptions.
My visit to Toronto Public Library, a social story for everyone. Today I'm visiting my library. Things are a little different now because of the pandemic, but you can still use the library safely in person and online at home. The library is free to use and I am always welcome at the library. There are many libraries to choose from in my city, Toronto.
Okay, so as you're able to tell, we're able to understand what the what is said in the video, but all the visual effects with like the person wearing the mask and at the library, all that is completely missed, and that is really important information. So now let's look at the same video, but with audio description.
My visit to Toronto Public Library, a social story for everyone.
A boy sitting at a table in the library in front of an open book. He is wearing a face mask and looking at the camera.
Today I'm visiting my library.
A boy wearing a face mask walking through the security gate at the library.
Things are a little different now because of the pandemic, but you can still use the library safely in person and online at home.
A girl wearing a face mask holding a book and looking at the camera.
The library is free to use and I am always welcome at the library.
An older boy and younger girl wearing face masks sitting on the carpet in the children's area of the library. They are looking at an open book in their laps, and the boy is pointing to something in the book. There is a walker behind him.
There are many libraries to choose from in my city, Toronto.
An illustrated map of the city of Toronto showing major landmarks, roads, and Lake Ontario.
Yeah, so as you can tell, there's audio description, which describes all the important things that are shown in this video. What's really great is that it inserts all these descriptions between the gaps of dialogue and speech, which I'll definitely talk about a little bit more. However, audio description is a changing landscape, and there's always improvements in the ways to enhance the video. And I think in this one, they definitely did a really great job. I would actually say personally, as a blind user of audio description, I would probably add a little bit more detail to fill out a little bit more of that silence. I think that that's pretty much my big thing personally, but yeah, it's an excellent demo, an excellent description as well. Okay, so techniques for audio description. Try to describe important visual elements of the scene, so information that cannot be understood solely through dialogue and sound effects can be understood by the blind or low vision viewer. So costumes, expressions, actions, these all need to be described. Always look at the video context to determine what is important to describe. So just like in image descriptions, context is, I think, one of the key ways of figuring out what's important to describe and what's not, because in audio description especially, you don't have as much time to be able to share all the information, so you have to prioritize. Insert short and concise descriptions between dialogue, and I think you'll see with upcoming videos, but also I'm sure you're aware that some videos are much more fast-paced, like trailers, where there really isn't much time. So make sure the volume of the audio description track is audible on top of the video. And this is more specific to UDescribe, since it allows anyone with a phone or a computer and microphone to be able to add audio descriptions. Depending on the audio settings, the audio track may be quieter than the video. With the professionally produced version, this usually isn't a concern because you'll have an audio engineer who will make sure that everything is equalized. Ensure that descriptions do not overlap with the video dialogue. So we've already talked a lot about this. And if expressions, actions, costumes, etc., cannot all be conveyed within audio gaps, use extended description. And this is a feature that's specific to UDescribe, where it will pause the video, or you're allowed to pause the video to be able to insert a longer description if there are some important elements that still can't be described within those gaps. Aim to be objective, so only describing what you see in the video. Describe the physical characteristics of people in the video. So these last 2 points pretty much are the same as describing alt text in terms of guidelines, best practices, and whatnot. So common audio description mistakes. So here's some things to keep in mind not to do. Do not let audio descriptions overlap the video dialogue. Do not censor. Do not describe the meaning behind the video or screen. Only describe what is occurring on screen. Do not reveal key information, so names of characters or actions, before they are shared with everyone else on screen. So no spoilers, pretty much, because that's just not very nice to the viewer to be able to kind of ruin that moment that everyone, you know, is expecting in the right time. So I'm going to pass it back to Megan so we can do a live example of bad descriptions.
Behold the North American
person standing by a fountain.
Student in his
the person is doing something on a phone. A book flies at the person and they look out at the screen at the audience.
And soon he becomes yet another victim of the dreaded research paper. And to think, all this could have been avoided. But how?
Then a building
like
shows
questions,
up.
The answer can be found in the library.
And a building shows up in the frame. The
libraries
building
have
is
more to
square
offer
with
than
weird
simply a
crisscross
mountain of
windows.
books and
As the video
resources.
goes on, stuff
They
bursts
also
out of the
house a
door like
elite
books.
class of super
The building then
intelligent,
disappears,
highly trained
and there is another
specialists who
person
are there
dressed
solely to
all in
help
black
you.
with a weapon.
They're
The
called
person dressed in black
librarians.
helps people do stuff like cross the
Librarians
street.
act like guides, leading you
Then
to
a
the
book
right
is
information,
shown,
refining the
helped by a
topic, and
person
helping
with
you
a
find
headphone
just what
band.
you need. And with library resources on the web, librarians can help you without even stepping foot in a
Person with the
library.
headband waves, then a bunch of bookshelves appear and a book floats out from one of the bookshelves. Ooh, there we go.
Awesome. So one of the obvious things, of course, is talking over the audio. You know, that was quite apparent in the demo. And she doesn't describe the physical characteristics of the person. There was also action that was described before it happened in the video. The description sometimes was vague and unclear, and the text on the screen wasn't read out as well. So like book covers. And again, this was a very fast-paced video, so you would have to prioritize all the important information. But there were definitely a few little gaps. You could insert something, and one of the techniques that some audio companies have used is to speed up the description that they've recorded, compress it a little bit so that it fits in between those gaps a little bit more nicely. So now I'm gonna pass it over back to Megan for more practice.
Thanks, Kai. Okay, so this practice session for audio descriptions, it could be a little bit like alt text. We're going to show you a video clip that's very short, 5 to 10 seconds long, and we'll ask you to choose the best audio description option. We will play the clip more than once because they are so short. So I'm going to launch the first audio description clip and poll, and here we go. Okay, we'll give it 30 more seconds. If you want to play the clip again, Corey, thank you. Okay, and the poll there. So for this option, we said the last, number 4, was the best audio description for the clip. It describes the figures and the building and says the text. So because the figures are part of the narrative of the clip, they should be described. Okay, let's go to clip 2. Okay, 30 more seconds. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I shared the results for this one. So number 4, which everyone guessed, Zoe looks at a cell phone, Oscar wearing headphones, works at a desk with a laptop and a boom microphone. Yellow electric bolts blink on the screen. The text says, they use digital technology every day, was our best option. Again, because the text, they use digital technology every day, the images need on the screen should be described because they support that narrative. And now let's look at the third one. Okay. Okay, 30 more seconds. Okay, thank you. Share the results. Okay, this one is a little bit more divided. Most selected the longer description, and some selected the text, just the text for this one. For this clip, we would suggest just saying the text because the multicolored plus signs and blue and red swirls aren't actually, it's more decorative than anything else. Like that doesn't add anything to the overall story. And I know that's hard to do because it's just short clips, but yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any questions about audio descriptions?
It looks like we have one in the Q&A. Lauren asks, do stories, reels have the same problem with audio descriptions as captions do? I've never seen any option about being able to add these types of descriptions to my stories on Instagram or Facebook. And that's actually, funnily enough, Reels does have this option where you can add the individual video clips, and then you can go in and do a voiceover over top of those right in the app. So it's actually sort of set up in a way that if you knew how to make your your own descriptions and sort of wrote them ahead of time. It's just sort of a matter of how you produce the video on the user end, right? So for audio descriptions, I think it actually is something entirely possible for the stories, or not for the reels. The stories are a little different. I don't think you can add that separate audio track, but yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Any more questions about audio descriptions? Give it a few moments in case somebody's typing. Okay, let's keep going and move on to the final section of the webinar.
Okay, so I'm just going to sort of briefly go over a couple more other social media considerations that they can sort of apply to any platform here. So the first one I wanted to mention is color and contrast. So you're going to want to avoid using only color to convey information in any of your posts, because this means persons who are colorblind may not be able to understand the information. So you're going to want to use a high color contrast between your text and background. Persons with low vision may not be able to understand your content if you use colors with low contrast. And a good example of this would be like gray text on a light blue background, for instance. And font choice is important too. So it's recommended that you use easily readable fonts, and sans serif fonts like Arial, Verdana, Helvetica, and Calibri are considered accessible choices. Oh, sorry. And so when you post content, try not to share anything that flashes 3 or more times in 1 second period, as this has been known to cause seizures in some people. And when possible, add a transcript for your video and audio media. This will be especially helpful if you need to add a longer detailed audio description. And something like this can also be useful for someone, say, who's deaf and blind, who may not be able to access the descriptions through audio. And I'm going to pass it back over to Megan to tell us about using social media managers.
Thanks, Corey. Okay, so some of you may use social media management software to manage and schedule how you post to social media. So while we're not promoting any of them, we would suggest you see if they're committed to being accessible and or if they provide guidelines for creating accessible social media posts. So here are 2 examples. Like Hootsuite is committed to following the standards outlined in the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, the AODA. And Hootsuite also provides really comprehensive guidelines and resources and help sections for creating accessible social media posts, which is a great resource. Additionally, Sprout Social, they say that they're committed to providing an accessibility platform that follows the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG 2.0 level AA. So like whatever social media software or platform you use, just look at their website, see if they're accessible. And if you want to start creating, and we hope you do, accessible social media posts, see if they have any resources to help you do the things that we talk about in this webinar. Corey?
Yeah, and so this is, we sort of touched on this a little bit before, but there are some types of social media posts, and specifically ones that are very trendy these days that are sort of difficult to make fully accessible, and in some cases not really accessible at all. And the big one is the Instagram stories and reels. You can, they do have a lot of accessibility features. You can include captions, but like we mentioned before, it doesn't really get picked up by screen readers, and there's no sort of transcript with them as well. So it's good for people who are deaf, but it's not maybe fully accessible. And a way you can sort of work around this with the way it's currently set up is you can sort of add an image description or a caption or something like that directly into the caption. And what I mean by that is we went over how to add a description to an actual photograph where Instagram has the actual space to put it in and the screen reader will pick that up. Doesn't have that for the reels and the stories. So you'd have to include that as sort of a separate text in the caption if you wanted it to work in that way. And for all these same reasons, TikTok is basically not super accessible as well, because it's basically just an entire app dedicated to those same type of story and reel video type content. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about posts and trying to have them reach as many people as possible. So.
Okay, so in summary, to create a fully accessible social media post, you need to include alternative text if you are posting an image or GIF. Use Pascal case hashtags preferably at the end of your social media posts. Limit the number of emojis you use or use them thoughtfully. Include captions in any media with audio, and add audio descriptions to videos if there's undescribed visual information users need to understand the content. So thank you so much, everybody, for attending this webinar. We will now move on to final questions. I'm just going to quickly